Hello there. Welcome to the Konsume podcast for News Junkies by News Junkies. My name's Lance Ranker. I am joined by Rick Ranker. Yes, there is relation there somehow. So Rick, how's it going, man?
Not too bad, not too bad. A lot of news to get to this week.
There's actually been quite a bit going on this week. Here we are recording on a Thursday, so just, for those actually listening right now as you're jogging, commuting to work, or whatever you're doing, thank you very much for listening. But, Hillary Clinton announced her candidacy for president. The likely Democratic nominee.
Yeah, that's a big announcement. That really kicks off the 2016 race in a big way. So
it really does.
And we're really getting into my favorite time of the year.
Oh man, this is like Christmas with a stocking full of candy and all other kinds of crap.
It only comes once every 4 years, and so this is big. It's like the Olympics, only it matters. Well, actually, no, I take that back. It doesn't matter, but it's much more exciting.
Yeah, no, she's definitely the likely nominee, but we'll get to that here in a bit. We'll tackle that probably middle of the show. California is going through a very serious drought. I mean, it's not even. Texas is dry as well. I mean, California is, right there, next to a freaking ocean and water everywhere and not a drop to drink. We're going to get into that here in just a minute. But a few other things going on just around the world, really. Something that actually dropped earlier today is the fact that WikiLeaks published more than 30,000 leaked Sony documents on their website. That is just a treasure trove of information, which I'm sure we'll be getting into, when we can actually find the time to dive into and search through the 170+ thousand emails, 30,000 plus documents, and basically just making Amy Pascal look like an even worse human being than she's already looked so far.
Yeah, this is really big. I mean, this is the first time that all the documents are put in a way that can really be distilled by the mainstream press. WikiLeaks has a search function where you can break down the search by email, by the documents themselves, the overall collection. It even has the Boolean search options so that you can really get in depth. So I think we're going to see a handful of stories breaking out of this.
Oh, absolutely. And, TMZ is already all over it, I'm sure. But we'll see what happens. It'll be pretty interesting because it's months ago we had heard that Amy Pascal and some other Sony executives were just blasting Adam Sandler, Seth Rogen, Angelina Jolie of all people. So it'll be pretty interesting to see what else comes out of all this, although she's already resigned and is gone from Sony. Other huge news before we get into the California drought, because apparently people like to drink water there, but Cuba is to be removed from the U.S. list of nations that sponsor terrorism, finally. It's I guess let's spend a minute on this. Let me ask you, how significant is this actually?
I don't know how significant it's going to be for the U.S. economy or anything other than perhaps strategic relationships. I don't know that outside of the people who immigrated from Cuba and the people who live on the island of Cuba, that it really has a big impact in any real way. I kind of question its significance other than it's sort of a milestone in American history in the Cold War.
Well, certainly. It kind of actually sort of puts like an official end to the Cold War, so to speak.
Well, I mean, you say that, but then we're still heating things up with Russia and a Mexican standoff with Vladimir Putin. So
true.
It's kind of odd timing that we're that the ice is thawing with Cuba just as things are refreezing with Moscow.
Yeah, no, that's true. I like the idea of actually the strategic relationship being built up finally with Cuba and the new regime there and as things change. So I don't think we're really going to understand the significance of that for probably another 10 years or so once things start settling there and we can actually see it. But
real quick, do you think that there's anything that is significant that could come out of diplomatic relations with Cuba?
Diplomatic, I mean, nothing that's really going to impact the rest of the world and foreign relations there. But I do believe the one area in which it'll certainly help is American baseball. Now all of a sudden, you might see the more Cuban players that don't really have to choose to defect. They can actually freely choose to play in Major League Baseball here in America versus in Cuba, maybe after they spent some time in the Cuban League. So
the truth comes out. That's really why you plugged that story, is because you were a baseball fanatic.
Maybe. So let's get to the Californian drought. Everybody there, residents have been told to reduce consumption. Farmers and whatnot are kind of suffering, although they can use as much as they want. And then there's Nestle, who is just taking on the idea of being the devil in all of this among residents there in California. So, you wrote a pretty detailed piece sort of getting into this. So let's get into it. Why is it so important that Californians have to reduce consumption?
Well, it's actually a little bit of a misnomer that it's the Californian residents who have to reduce the consumption. The governor cut our water by 25%, the consumption overall that all urban potable water or urban drinking water is. But that only accounts for 6% of the state's water consumption. 80% of that goes to irrigation, which is the agriculture industry, which is in the top 10 of worldwide producers of everything from pistachio nuts and almonds to alfalfa and feed for we actually export feed for livestock globally. Mm-hmm. California alone is the world's 8th largest economy. And per capita, California consumes less water than most other states. We actually rank below the national average for water consumption. So for us, it's really not so much why should Californian residents reduce consumption. It's more a matter of how does the economic powerhouse of the nation, who relies on water for that economic output, how does it get by with a distinct lack of water?
Well, yeah, that's definitely a fair question. And, part of it, of course, is this natural cycle of things as far as warming, cooling, droughts, and rain periods throughout the history of the Earth, long before we ever got here. However, it's also obvious that we're kind of screwing certain things up as far as some of the decisions being made at the local, state, and federal government level when it comes to dealing with climate change. Let me ask you this then, because you're more familiar with this than I am. Is it possible this is actually kind of a man-made disaster right in California's backyard by, maybe decisions when it comes to certain dams or releasing, excess rainwater into the ocean as opposed to storing it and so on and so forth?
Not to my understanding. I'm not an ecologist, I'm not a scientist, but what I do understand from the situation is that the runoff is important to go out into the ocean because without that, the salination levels for salmon swimming upstream would be so severe that they would die off. It would have a very detrimental impact to a lot of wildlife and ecosystems that exist in a very diverse state such as California, that if those water runoffs and the water going to Bureau of Land Management weren't put back into the ecosystem, it would actually exacerbate a lot of the conditions we're seeing. So it seems, I understand how to the man on the street that would seem kind of counterintuitive that we're allowing a lot of fresh water to run into the Pacific Ocean. But there are specific reasons for doing that. And in the meantime, the people that are going to suffer are going to be the farmers in the Central Valley. They're the first ones that are really having their water cut, or that there simply won't be a supply of it trickling down to them. And so they're really ultimately the ones that are going to have to figure out their consumption or pack up and move to Nebraska and try to sell corn.
Yeah, no, it's certainly going to impact the prices of food across the country for sure, as well as nuts and fruits and other vegetables, as well as wineries. That's a pretty big part of the economy there in California. Desalination has long been professed as too expensive to work and this and that, but now all of a sudden the cost of water is rising rapidly in states that are faced with serious drought restrictions and issues that continue to go on for the foreseeable future by forecasters and whatnot, meteorologists. And same thing is happening in Texas. You've got some other states in the Midwest, or get out to Nevada and, of course, Arizona and all. They're dealing with extended droughts as well. But for states such as Texas and California, desalination plants are kind of a solution because you've got the Gulf of Mexico there with Texas. And then, of course, California's got this great big wide open ocean that you can tap, but obviously too salty. So these desalination plants are a thing. But before, back, say 10 years ago, they were considered to be way too expensive. The cost of operating those far exceeded the benefits of getting that fresh, clean water to drink. But now that might not be the case anymore. I mean, do you see California really adopting desalination plants more often than not here in the foreseeable future?
I see a demand from the public opinion demanding a look at desalination technology. But when you look at the cost to produce a gallon of water, it actually consumes so much fuel and so much resources in dollars that it's actually cheaper to have trucks drive in fresh water from other states, because literally the process of desalination is still in its infancy. So the idea that we will have desalination plants in the next 5 or 10 years that can kind of, quench our thirst for the water isn't really a reality yet. It's still cost prohibitive. It's almost like fracking. Fracking 15 years ago was way too expensive, for the barrel of oil we would get as a result. But as oil hit, over $100 a barrel, then it actually started to become relatively competitive in terms of cost. So we're not there yet with water, but if it gets to the point that it does become competitive to desalinate versus bringing it in via truck, we're going to have bigger problems than trying to figure out how to desalinate, because that's going to mean that we have a very serious crisis with the watershed and the ecosystem.
Well, plus with the desalination plants, you're looking at a 3 to 5 year construction phase to begin with anyway, before you can even operate it to see if it's functioning properly. So, I mean, you're probably looking at anywhere from a 7 to 10 year waiting period just to get that new fresh water.
Right, but at least when it is up and running, it won't be the urban drinking water that is, put on the chopping block of what's not going to trickle down, from Northern California to Southern California.
Right, and you made a great point about fracking, and I will say this: when it comes to fracking, all the controversy surrounding it, the tools and methods used and whatnot, that were basically developed because they had to try something different, and actually made it a bit more affordable over time. It took quite a bit of innovation and research, but they did make it work financially to where the cost of oil has gone down quite a bit and fracking is still relevant. And so maybe, being forced to really invest heavily into desalination plants will force some innovation to take place, and some really smart people somewhere will figure out more effective and cheaper ways to produce clean water.
Yeah, the irony here, though, is that fracking is actually exacerbating the water problem nationwide, because the underground well systems in the underground springs are the water sources for the hydraulic fracturing underground. So that's a very large portion of our water supply nationwide. So yeah, desalination may ultimately end up being a solution because of things like fracking, and because of really just because of drought cycles, particularly here on the West Coast.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we'll definitely have to keep monitoring it and seeing how things progress and what Governor Jerry Brown's going to do moving forward, other than his initial decision to tell people, nope, can't drink water, leave it alone. That's an exaggeration, of course, but...
Now, 2015 is actually, we're on par to be worse than last year, and that'll be a 5-year drought. That's calamity. So we'll see what happens, but it's not looking good if you're a farmer in Central California.
Well, and with Texas, it's kind of wheats and beef is what Texas produces quite a bit of, and drought's been going for about 5-6 years here in the state. So it's kind of the same boat in a sense. So it's definitely gonna be challenging, and people kind of having to figure out new ways around it. But moving on to the Clinton announcement, it's it was inevitable. I mean, kind of 2 years of sort of, powwowing around and all the speculation and all the coy denials. President? Me? No, I could never run for president again. And then, of course, here it is. And she actually does it in a pretty interesting way that I would have never expected out of her, considering the way she ran her 2008 campaign. And, definitely chime in here if you've got some thoughts, because, what's interesting is, all right, she put together this nearly 2-minute long video to announce her candidacy for president. But she doesn't even appear in the video for like the first 90 or so seconds of it. She only pops up towards like the last 20 seconds and basically says, I'm doing something too. I'm running for president. But the big takeaway, though, is essentially what she did say, other than, of course, the visuals of the multiracial and minority type families trying to have children or getting married and so on and so forth. Now, how they're all doing something with their everyday lives. But basically, here's what she also said in it. Quote, Everyday Americans need a champion, and I want to be that champion, she said. Continue the quote, so I'm hitting the road to earn your vote because it's your time, and I hope you'll join me on this journey, end quote. When she actually launched her campaign in 2008, she was kind of viewed as a shoo-in nominee, a shoo-in to win the White House, serve her 2 terms, right off in the sunset. Clinton saved the day again, something to that effect. And it didn't really work out that way. President Obama kind of came out of nowhere, that dark horse senator from Chicago. Nobody really knew much about, but he really channeled that young college-aged crowd, minority base, and got the African American voter turnout to record levels that we haven't seen before. And so with Clinton, she's sort of taken the approach of that she's going to try to be more personable for people when she's on the campaign trail. I mean, she's already basically scheduled smaller, intimate venues to speak with people, in Iowa and Ohio and other key states, battleground states already, whereas before, if it wasn't a packed house of 10,000 plus people, it's almost like she didn't care about it. Whereas this time around, she's like, no, I'll go talk in coffee shops. Let me ask you, do you see this about face with Clinton from 2008 to now as authentic or political?
Nothing with Hillary Clinton is authentic, first of all. And that's not being snide, that's perhaps a little cynical, but no. Understanding the Clinton machine is to understand that nothing is not calculated, triangulated, and poll tested. You mentioned 2008, it seemed inevitable for her. And you said something interesting. You said, Clinton can come and save the day again. And I think that in 2008, when Hillary was running, Bill Clinton had only been out of office for 7 or 8 years. Mm-hmm. And so there was still a sort of a fresh nostalgia in the minds of a lot of voters. But now that you have a lot of the 18 to 24-year-olds, 18 to 34-year-olds, or actually, 18 to 34-year-olds, really, that are going to be the surge that she needs to push this over the top against a Republican, I don't know that is going to help her so much because you don't have a lot of people in that age bracket that were really particularly familiar with Bill Clinton's presidency.
True. The one thing, though, is she's certainly the most qualified candidate for the White House. She's certainly the most experienced, especially when it comes to foreign relations, which is going to be very, very important for this next president, considering where the United States stands geopolitically speaking. It's Hillary Clinton on foreign policy. That's regardless of whether you agree with her or not, just her experience in that world alone should make her a shoo-in, shouldn't it?
I don't know about a shoo-in, but certainly I think any contender is going to have a hell of a time trying to spin themselves as on equal footing with her in terms of foreign policy. The one thing that I will say is that Hillary Clinton has 0 executive experience.
True.
So, you're coming into an executive position in a very vast, complex apparatus where executive experience is kind of key.
Yeah, but do we doubt that she could actually do what's asked of her in the White House?
I think if you sample the nation, you will find any number of tens of millions of people who question her ability.
Right, but do they question her ability because they simply do not like her and do not trust her, or do they question her ability because they genuinely believe that she doesn't have what it takes to actually run the country?
I guess my question to you, I'd fire back, is in politics, is there a difference? And so for her, Hillary Clinton is a very interesting candidate, and it's interesting to me the way this race could shape up, because 2016 is Hillary Clinton almost in an echo chamber by herself on the Democratic side.
Yep.
Nobody's going to particularly rock the boat, with the exception of maybe some of the elder statesmen of the party, like Bernie Sanders. I saw in the piece you wrote, you mentioned Elizabeth Warren.
Mm-hmm. She's the darling of the progressives, so.
Yeah, and so I thought it was interesting that you mentioned her, because I think if anybody's going to rock the boat, it's going to be the people that are in the twilight of their career anyway. Mm-hmm. And it's not going to be the Martin O'Malleys. At least I would be very surprised if O'Malley.
Well, what's interesting about Governor O'Malley is that he's got that blue-collar background. He's got a track record to where the progressive Democrats who were sort of gun shy to pull that trigger as far as voting for Clinton is concerned, because they just, it's funny, is because progressive Democrats view Clinton as being moderate, almost leaning right, but in reality, it's the only thing she's kind of conservative on as far as values are concerned is when it comes to basically ripping down other countries and rebuilding them. She's pretty hawkish in that sense. And that other than that though, I mean, she's actually fairly liberal and all. I wonder how much of her reputation as sort of being that hawk leads people to believe she's probably more moderate than she actually is. But with O'Malley, though, continue this point real quick, sorry. But with O'Malley, though, I feel like he just kind of sees that, what have I got to lose? Come out swinging and really say, do we really need, the same two families vying for the White House?
No, and that's a good point. I don't think that's going to earn him any points in Camp Clinton. But what is left to do? I mean, it's not common for a governor to make a play for the Senate. If he blows this in the primary, he has no shot at a VP slot. So where would that really leave him? I mean, he would just sort of be left adrift with really nowhere to go. So I think he's going to stay, he's going to make enough noise where he distinguishes himself from Hillary Clinton, but I think he falls in line just enough that he's not excluded from a short list of VP nominees.
I actually wholeheartedly agree with you there. I actually think if he really just went balls to the wall, I think he could make some serious noise. But ultimately, though, the lack of money and fundraising capability is going to hurt him against Clinton. I mean, anybody's not going to be able to do what Clinton can do with that star power, with that fundraising apparatus. I mean, I was reading that basically her camp is looking to basically raise nearly like $2 billion for this presidential campaign, which will be the most in the history of the country and presidential campaigns. So I mean, she's going all out. And even on the GOP side, the Republican side, is there really anybody, in that party that can kind of go toe-to-toe with Clinton other than maybe a Rick Perry, who's sort of really reimagined himself since his sort of embarrassment in the last election cycle?
I think that Rick Perry has an opportunity to rebrand himself. I think he learned a lot of lessons in the last election cycle. And I also think that he resonates enough with the conservative branch of the Republican Party that he could be a very appealing candidate. But there's also Jeb Bush, who has a very well-oiled machine. Marco Rubio just announced. Both of those guys are from Florida. So if either one of them get into a general with someone like Hillary Clinton, I think you have an interesting campaign because Jeb Bush can be moderate enough to appease some of the independents who may not have a favorable opinion of Clinton. Meanwhile, you get the GOP war chest behind you, and Florida is all but a given.
That is true, which kind of makes it all the more important for Clinton to choose, somebody to be her running mate, almost strategically, and it almost might leave O'Malley off that short list because, how important is Maryland in the grand scheme of things as far as those votes go?
Does Maryland even have 3 electoral votes?
Well, the fact that we're sort of questioning that lets you know just how unimportant Maryland is, and also, I mean, why would she not choose somebody, that her running mate, has ties in Ohio or something along those lines?
Yeah, and that very well may be what happens. I mean, I'm always surprised at how surprised I am in campaigns. In 2008, it was looking like, okay, Hillary and McCain, Obama's going to make some noise and keep them honest early on, and boy, that is not how that played out.
Yeah, I thought Obama could be a solid VP choice just because of his ability to really rally the base, but then him and Clinton just kept going at it. It's just so aggressive to where it's like it made it an impossibility and all. And so it's like, all right, well, who else out there could Hillary tap as a VP? And then, President Obama just really turned it on and was like, all right, never mind. He just left Clinton in the dust. And I was surprised as well in the 2008 campaign because I was envisioning a John McCain ticket that did not include Sarah Palin. I was thinking McCain-Romney, but that didn't happen.
No, they really went for the I think they were trying to counterbalance Barack Obama's
charisma,
blackness. No, I think they were trying to counterbalance his blackness. If we're going to be really honest about it,
with a woman.
Yeah, really, I think that They knew that he would likely lock up the Hispanic and African American vote and bring a lot of women with him. And I think that was sort of their way of saying, we in the GOP too are progressive. See, we can nominate a vice president. And I think that was a way to, at the very least, make overtures to to a lot of communities that have been or have felt abandoned by the Republican Party.
Yeah, I still believe that if it wasn't Romney, which they didn't feel like he was the guy, maybe they should have tapped John Huntsman to be the VP running mate for McCain, because at least he could have run on experience and some like legitimate ability to govern over.
Yeah,
but that's not here nor there.
I'm sure it was poll tested, and shocker, Americans care more about the brand that they, that their idealism represents.
Style over substance.
Yeah, pretty much.
Which is sad. So, before we close this segment out and kind of get into some entertainment talk, let me ask you this. Because, I've often wondered out loud, even to you, that, like, I wonder if Clinton needs to maybe be a little sort of right of center to appeal to more of the voting populace. But then it kind of dawned on me that, she doesn't even need to worry about that. What she should probably be concerned with is the progressive Democrats who could take their votes elsewhere or just simply sit out this election, which leads me to believe that if she is going to be taken seriously by progressive Democrats and just many of the Democrats in general, then she's probably going to have to sort of channel what Senator Elizabeth Warren or Senator Bernie Sanders have been talking about when it comes to and speaking very passionately about the issues of inequality in America. I'm of the opinion and belief that if she's unable to do that once again, because she didn't do it very well in 2008, then she's pretty much probably paving the road in gold for Warren to sort of make a late announcement and get in there, or even Sanders who's still exploring, or even possibly O'Malley to earn the Democratic nomination and ultimately probably lose to whoever the GOP sends up.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Earlier you talked about how Hillary Clinton is talking to more intimate audiences right now. And I think that's really just a function of where we are in the process. She just announced, so she's in, she's in New Hampshire, she's in Iowa, and she's having conversations with everybody there. But particularly the Democrats, I think that she's behind the scenes trying to reassure people that she is indeed still a liberal at heart. None of that has changed, that the tone she set in 2008 was indeed more to be palatable in a general election. And so I think that there's sort of a doublespeak that you have to have in order to be elected just to begin with. You have to be a professional, I don't want to say professional liar, but a person who can professionally spin anything favorably to the audience you're speaking to.
Right, kind of get out of those tight spaces if you're sort of cornered by your opposition there.
So I think a lot of these intimate settings are probably reassuring people, reassuring donors, reassuring the base, and the people that are that she needs to get on board next, that she is indeed very much a liberal. And then once that war machine kicks up, starts bringing in the money, getting closer to closing out the primary, she can start shifting more middle right to have a competitive voice against whoever the GOP sends up.
Okay, well, let me ask you this one last question before we move on. Outside of her ability to fundraise and just all the money she's going to have to do whatever the hell she wants with through the presidential campaign, assuming, of course, she gets the Democratic nomination. All right. And never mind her experience, serving the administration, President Obama and foreign policy record. What is it about her that you think would make her a good candidate for president?
Well, if we're talking about people wanting style over substance, I think the fact that she would be the first female president is one of the check marks. Mm-hmm. I think the second is that she does indeed have foreign policy experience. That's another check mark for her, that she's not going to be, a Jimmy Carter. I don't think anybody envisions Hillary Clinton being a Jimmy Carter were she to be elected.
Well, so especially considering the fact that a lot of the foreign relations we're dealing with right now is in the Middle East, where they may not respect a female leader.
Yeah, but I think her argument for that would be, I'm the commander in chief, and we have more warships than you, we have more fighter jets than you, we have more drones and Hellfire missiles than you, and you don't need to respect me as a person, you just need to respect my military.
Right. So it's going to be pretty interesting. We're still very early on. We don't have all the nominees on either side just yet, although there's certainly a longer list on the GOP side, which we'll probably get into next week. We'll see. But let's kind of move on to a little bit of entertainment talk, because I started watching a pretty solid show on Netflix. It's a Netflix original, which I was surprised by. And then you actually watched a documentary over the last few days that you were just like wow with. So what's the documentary you watched?
So the documentary I watched was called Teenage Paparazzo, and it's Adrian Grenier's documentary. He did like 5 years ago. I just stumbled upon it, though, and it was fascinating because it's really talking about our fascination with celebrity culture, why the paparazzi / entertainment and gossip magazines and websites, like why that apparatus exists and what that relationship really is. And essentially what it boiled down to was that we as primates look for examples of the dominant ones in our tribe. And now that our tribe consists of 7 billion people worldwide, we gravitate towards celebrity as a way to take our cues as to what success is or how to become successful. But he trailed this kid named Austin, who was like 13 at the time, and he had a camera, and he would just go out. He lived here in L.A. and would just go hit different spots, like go hit the Ivy, go hit Mr. Chow, hang outside of Boa, and just start snapping pictures. And the paparazzi were kind of like, "Whoa, what's happening here? How old are you?" He told him like 13. And so I guess Adrian from Entourage, he's the actor that played Vinny Chase on Entourage. He put together this documentary that I just stumbled across and definitely wanted to plug on the show because I thought it was a brilliant piece of it was a very informative piece about media and our celebrity culture and just what that beast of a machine looks like from the inside and out. And very fascinating the way he just sort of dissected both the celebrities, interviewing people like Alec Baldwin to Paris Hilton. He ran the gamut there with who he talked to. But then he also talked to a lot of paparazzi. He hung out with them for a few weeks and rode around and chased other celebrities down and snapped their picture kind of in disguise, and really told the storyline of this kid paparazzi who he screened the documentary for after he was completed. And you could tell the kid kind of felt like a jerk because he had acted a bit like a jerk. Being a paparazzi, even though he had the free pass of being a kid, and followed up with him a year later and just to sort of talk about some of the life lessons he learned. It was a very, very deep, sort of introspective, but external perspective on media too. Highly recommended. It's called Teenage Paparazzo. It's been out for a while, but has not gotten a whole lot of play. So
okay.
Thanks to the subreddit Documentaries, by the way, for making that one the front page yesterday.
Nice. Yeah, no, for me, I'm sure a lot of other people have also gotten into this, but Daredevil, okay? Everybody's familiar, well, not everybody, but a lot of people are probably familiar with the story of Daredevil, Marvel comic. Man becomes blind when he was a kid, and all of a sudden his other senses are heightened. He has no real superpowers. He just learns to fight and becomes a vigilante crime fighter. And so Netflix and Marvel Studios actually worked together to create the Daredevil Netflix original series. And I think, other than it being very well acted, okay, all the fight scenes seem very authentic. There's nothing crazy or just sort of out there that happens in these fight scenes to where, holy crap, he just floated in the air. No, like they're actually all, wow, like if you were just a normal person who has some skills fighting, whether it's kung fu or whatever other style, this is probably actually how legitimately it would look when you take two skilled martial artists, put them together and like have a fight to the death. It looks very authentic. So it's got that going for it. The acting's all done very, very well. But I think more than anything, where they got it right was the rating. It's TVMA. All right, a Marvel TV series, even though it's on Netflix, is TVMA. Any other television show or movie that Marvel's done with all their comics and whatnot that they brought to the big screen or small screen, they've always tried to have it be like a PG-13 rating. They never wanted to venture into R or anything, but Daredevil TVMA, and I think that's where they got it right. I'm not going to really dive into the story, just in case for those who have not seen it yet or are not as far ahead as I am, but it came out on the 10th of April. I've got 3 episodes episodes left in the season. I am thoroughly enjoying it. The writing was just is spot on. The acting's spot on. So you can't go wrong. I certainly encourage anybody who is yet to check it out. Even if you're not a comic book fan, I think you'll enjoy it.
Okay, so this just dropped, basically last week it dropped?
Yep. And, how Netflix does it, they basically film the entire season, released on a certain date, much like House of Cards and whatnot. So it's all right there. If you got a Netflix account, I strongly encourage it.
Oh, you don't have to tell me about House of Cards. I'm waiting until February of next year for for my next batch of episodes. So you said they made a TV MA, which is, I guess, if you're going to do a show or a movie about comics, that's a bit of an unusual move. Now, do you think they did that because of the success they've seen at the box office? They felt that, the 12 to 17-year-old crowd really wasn't their core audience. It was really more the 18 to 24, 18 to 34-year-olds.
Well, if you look at the story of Daredevil and sort of his background, his history, all the traumatic events through his life, and also just a lot of hand-to-hand combat where, you're basically getting your face meets fist until you're just done. So there's a lot of blood. There's a lot of fighting. You'll see people who actually do get blown up and die. And so whereas that's a huge departure from what Marvel typically does, especially with Stan Lee, is, it's inferred somebody died, but you never really see it in the movies and whatnot for Marvel. But in this, they basically stayed true to the comic, to how dark it was, with, blind lawyer Matt Murdock's, history, how he became blind, who his father was, and, sort of how he came upon Wilson Fisk, who, by the way, is expertly acted by Vincent D'Onofrio. So you would actually know him from Law and Order, Full Metal Jacket, Men in Black. You'll know who he is if you see his picture. So
wait, who is he in Full Metal Jacket?
In Full Metal Jacket, let me look here. Yeah, that was. Oh yeah, he. What's his name? Pyle. He played Private Pyle. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So it's that's him, and he's had a pretty long career acting, and he had a very long run on Law and Order. But I've never seen the character of Wilson Fisk play with so much depth and just the ability to like the character, even though he's an evil man, and all. So that's just how expertly it's done by D'Onofrio. And all, and then the rest of the cast is spot on. Charlie Cox plays Matt Murdock. He's probably not as well known as some people, but he does it very, very well. When I first saw him, take on the role, I was like, who the hell is this guy? Great choice. And then you've got Deborah Ann Wall, who was in True Blood for the longest time. She plays a pretty heady character as well. And the other thing I want to mention before we kind of stop this here, but they didn't do it big budget. Like, if they would have done a 2-hour Daredevil movie and recreated it from the old Ben Affleck days, they would have spent 20 minutes on secondary character development and then gone right into the action. I'm glad they didn't do that, because then you've got guys like Eldon Henson, who plays Matt Murdock's right-hand man and best friend. Great character actor. He was recently in the Hunger Games. He's been in a few other movies. He's just a great character actor, very likable, and kind of adds some timely comedic relief here and there. Had it been a big budget film, they would have never even bothered to go searching for him. And so the secondary characters and actors are spot on. It's just a fantastic show so far.
Sounds like a good one.
Yep. So I guess that's going to wrap it up for us on this one. So we appreciate everybody listening, and just make sure you check us out on Konsume.com. You got to hit us up on Twitter at KonsumeHQ. My Twitter handle's at Lance M. Ranker, and then yours is at Rick Ranker. And then, of course, you can also find us on Facebook. And then, of course, the pod is on iTunes as well as our website, so definitely check it out there. Any final thoughts from you?
No, just really looking forward to the to seeing what WikiLeaks is able to shed light on that we haven't seen on Sony in the previous handful of months. So definitely looking forward to that next week. Yeah, absolutely. It'll definitely be interesting, because that just dropped. I'm like, wait a minute, what? That's a pretty big thing. But that's going to do it for us tonight. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you next week.